cat. Here, introduce him.
Wow. This is Mr. Business. It's my cat. Isn't he so cute?
Good morning. I'm Molly, and I'd like to welcome you to The Angle, a GRS series highlighting our instructors shaping the 2026 class season. Let's go. Good morning, Mitchell.
Morning.
How have you been doing? How's Nebraska treating you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Staying busy, engraving on Rolexes mainly.
You worked at a family jeweler's for a long time, and then you just recently moved to Nebraska. And now you're mostly you're independently working for other businesses, correct?
Yep, I was a jeweler at Phillips Diamond Shop in Marion, Iowa. I was there for 10 years. And wife got a promotion, required a move, and decided to go out on my own here.
What's your favorite thing that you've had on your bench lately?
Reed sends me a lot of things, and he's been, sending me watches mostly. I kind of like the little break in between the watches to work on rings and stuff like that for some other clients, like shoebox. And that stainless steel on those watches are pretty rough to work in, right?
Yeah.
I've had to make a lot of changes in geometry of my engravers in order to make it, last longer.
Are you one of those engravers who will have like 5 of the same graver lined up, just prepared for breaks, or do you resharpen every time it breaks?
I resharpen every time.
I do
It's right
too.
there.
I do too.
It's like, I used to set up like a bunch of the same thing, but I kind of wanted to, simplify the tools on my bench and stuff. So I do kind of have to stop. And I have one that I kind of save for, basic cutting and stuff where I kind of round off the bottom just slightly. And then, and then my shading one, that one has to be really crisp. So I guess I have 2 of each, but not like a ton of them.
I resharpen all the time too. But sometimes it's nice because it's like, okay, take a break from the microscope, come over here, For anyone kind of new to GRS, can you kind of give a little bit of insight into your background and how you got started as a GRS instructor?
Well, I first got into engraving through printmaking, actually, at my local community college, and got taught how to hand push into copper plates and zinc plates and all that stuff. My mother was a manager of the jewelry store that I worked at, and she was like, you can do this for a living. We send stuff out to get engraved every once in a while. And, you could do this on rings and, other jewelry and stuff like that. So we looked into it all, found Sam Alfano, saw his work online, and I was like, I want to do that. Then we went down the pipeline of the tools, found out about GRS, and then found out that they had the week-long classes. My first one was with Rex. My second one was with Sam. And then he talked to Kim, which was the general manager at the time, and was like, oh, you got to get this kid down here and be part of the program that we had at the time, the Artisan Alley program at GRS. And so she offered me to come down to Emporia, Kansas, work at GRS. And then she was like, you can go to the local college, get your bachelor's of fine arts with the emphasis in engraving, and work here at GRS. I started out in assembly, so I made all the tools. My favorite thing to make was vices, because it gave you a little bit of a workout working on the vices. Wasn't too hard to put vices together too as like a new person, not as complicated as like the machines and all that. Worked in R&D as well, since I engraved with the stuff and I kind of knew how it was made and utilized the tools. So I'd give feedback. I did technical service as well, since I kind of knew the R&D, how to engrave with it, how to put it all together. It kind of worked well to put that all together and handle those kind of phone calls and stuff. So it was fun. I've been throughout the building during that whole time. Graduated, making it happen now, putting all those skills to
When were you first approached about teaching at GRS?
I first started out doing the trade shows for 2 years before they asked for me to try teaching. When I was first going to the community college, I was already going in the direction of becoming an art teacher. That was like the trajectory that we kind of had me on as far as courses goes. I knew I kind of wanted to do part of that at least a little bit. They asked if I wanted to do that. I'm like, if there's anything I can do to give back to the community, because GRS has given me so much and so much knowledge and stuff that I learned just being there and being around the professional engravers and stuff. If I can give some of that back to the community, I would absolutely love to. So jumped on the opportunity for sure to do that.
I saw that you recently went back and covered for Lee, who is the instructor up at the college right now. How was that? Was it weird to kind of return back to Emporia State, or was it very fulfilling?
It was fun actually, because where we were in the basement and we had pretty rudimentary setup and stuff. But it was great to
So
be back
dark
because
down there.
I know it's true. And no microscopes you just had to share one with everybody.
Yeah.
And so really it was great to be back and see how improved it was, and the setup that they have for everybody is just so nice.
You hadn't seen the new studio before that?
I've seen it, but I haven't really, like, I've seen pictures of it and stuff, but I've never been in it. Yep, that's true.
Yeah, it's totally different. Totally
It's
different.
great. I'm hoping that, it'll become more popular and we'll get those classes filled even more. Because, I mean, they were about half filled and stuff, but I think people just don't know about it yet. I think the opportunity is there, and I'm sure it will probably.
Today's episode is sponsored by Tab Orientation Anonymous. Are you a left tab engraver working in a top tab world, or a top tab engraver quietly wondering if you're wrong? At Tab Orientation Anonymous, we believe there's no right, only the one you learn. Defend aggressively and will never change. Whether you've been judged in comment section on Facebook or whispered tab like it's a confession at the bench, TOA is to remind you you are valid. Visit taborientationanonymous.com for zero solutions, endless debates, and absolutely no consent. Thinking back to your first class, like taking your first class, did you have any moments where you were like, oh, light bulb, like this makes such a big difference? Or was there anything that you just really struggled with for a while?
So, I mean, with my first class, I was doing some engraving and stuff beforehand. So I did have access to the pneumatic system as well at the jewelry store. So I kind of got in some practice and stuff like that before I even came over to do the class. So I kind of had a little head start in comparison to somebody that would just be like completely new.
What were struggles for you then, like learning it on your own? Where did you turn for resources?
I think the sharpening itself, being able to be there and utilize the sharpening system and being taught how to utilize it properly and doing, all the numbers, the geometry and stuff like that. That's always difficult for a new person. Yeah, that and working under the microscope, getting that hand-eye coordination when you're looking forward, but your hands are below and kind of working below. And so that's kind of a weird disconnect at first, but that's also something that you get very used to.
I think that's something that people don't expect coming into the basic classes. Like, you just think that you're going to be able to work with the microscope fine, but there really is a lot of adjusting and kind of getting used to it.
There's a learning curve for sure. But then the ability, though, to be able to see everything that you're doing is just, it accelerates your work so quickly, in my opinion, that it's worth it to try to learn get over that curve, right? And be able to
Definitely.
utilize those microscopes.
Do you ever like, are you ever on max zoom and you still try to zoom in more? I do it all the time.
You do, you try to get even closer to see.
Yeah, I don't know if I just have granny eyes or what.
You know, when you are first engraving and stuff, you do have a tendency to want to zoom in like a lot more. Um, but being able to zoom out a little bit and see the piece
The
as a
overall.
whole, yeah, is
Yeah.
always a little better, especially when it comes to doing the scroll work and making sure that your
Hmm.
scrolls have a nice, you know, spiral inwards. Sometimes when you zoom in too much and get focused in one area, yeah, you end up maybe having some elbows in some places where you didn't mean to because they don't connect up quite as well because you aren't
Hmm.
zoomed all the way out.
Well, and you like to do like larger pieces too. What has been your favorite canvas to work on?
My favorite canvas to work on? Ooh,
Hmm.
that's a good question. I've done motorcycle parts. I did really love doing my guitar. That was pretty cool. The resonator. That project was really cool. That was a fun one to work on for sure.
I think my favorite thing of yours that I saw while working at Glendo was your like insects that you would create and
Oh
engrave
yeah.
on.
Yeah, I had
Unusual.
little engraved parts and stuff on them, but yeah, those were really fun.
Yeah.
Utilizing the laser welder to like tack
Hmm.
together all the little watch parts and make your, yeah, those little things. I
They
wish
were
I
cool.
had a laser welder so that I could still do that because I still have a bunch of watch parts and cogs that I could use. I just don't have the, yeah, ability to piece them all together like I did.
That was one thing moving to Ohio too. I'm like, man, I don't have all the equipment that I used to have.
So I can't
It's
play
nice
around
working at
as much.
Glendo. Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
it's true.
What's something that you have in your head? Like you're talking about all these little watch parts. Is there something that you have in your head as a project for those if you had the equipment, or do you have any big ideas brewing?
I mean, I wanted to do like, you know, I've done like a little larger steampunk spiders. I kind of wanted to do like a really tiny one and then put in one of those watch cases, those
Hmm.
ones that you hang it down, and then maybe use like fishing line or something to come from like the butt of it, like that's the
Oh,
silk
that'd be
from
cool.
the spider, and
Yeah.
it's kind of hanging down in the case and stuff. I thought that'd be kind of fun. But I've done an octopus. I can grab them if you want.
Sweet.
I've done
Yeah,
an
yeah.
octopus, and I did a spider back at Phillips for the local orchestra. So I actually used some watch parts, but I asked them to bring in like a bunch of instruments, and I tried to grab pieces from the instruments, like from the flutes, clarinets,
Hmm.
and things like that, and piece them together. So I made a steampunk spider that they sold at an auction for the Cedar Rapids Orchestra.
Oh,
So that was
cool.
kind of cool. Yeah. But I'll be right back. I'm gonna
Yeah,
grab
go
them.
grab it. I want to see it.
This is spider here. Ooh, it's so spiky.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I
you can
always
see
thought those
it
were
very
so neat.
well. And
Hmm.
then this is the
Oh, that's
octopus.
cool. Yeah,
I even has the tube that kind of is on the back and stuff. But yeah.
that's fun. What would you say is your biggest inspiration for like that kind of work or your like, personal enjoyment work?
I've always liked like the steampunk kind of style sort of
Hmm.
thing, you know, mixing in like, you know, old styles with new technology.
Yeah,
Not really like
yeah.
new. But yeah, I've always kind of liked that style. And they always like incorporate a lot of like Art Deco kind of styles in there as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I love Art Deco kind of style
I do
as well
too.
too.
I do
But
too.
yeah.
You were teaching the stone setting classes and you had been asking and asking about teaching a knife class because that's the kind of work you do personally. And you
Mhm.
got to teach that knife class as I was leaving. How was that? Are you excited to teach the knife class again this year?
I wanted to do a design that incorporated both, geometric and organic shapes and utilizing like two different types of metals too, as well. So I wanted like the different colors in there as well. I thought
Hmm.
that'd be fun. But they were really interested in how I did the design, like how I came up with it. I just pulled up all the iterations of it on my iPad and I kind of walked through. We looked at the knife as a whole and how you might break it up into sections and, try to get it to be one cohesive piece or to, because I showed them different ways. I was like, I could split up into two sections and then have them flow, or just one big one and have it go across. Or like I did here, broke it up into three basically and had that geometric shape in the middle kind of tie the two sides
Yeah.
together. So yeah, it was kind of cool, kind of an organic thing that I didn't have planned, but now I will definitely talk about the
That's what I
design
was gonna
and
ask.
yeah, how that came to be.
So, how would you describe your teaching style?
I always start out on the board and kind of draw out, the steps or, whatever I'm teaching, whether it be doing the gravers and stuff like that. We go through all that on the board. I always give a physical demonstration then too as well. So I try to accommodate for both people that like to learn, from something
Hmm.
drawn out on the flat and then do the demonstration. And then I allow them to try it out for themselves. And then during that time, will walk around and make sure that, nobody has any questions or anything
Hmm.
like that. That's at least the formula that I kind of use. Talk
Hmm.
about it on the board, demo, and then work one-on-one, go around one-on-one.
Is there anything specific that you're watching for when you walk around one?
It kind of depends on the class, right?
Hmm.
So in the beginner's course, I'm looking at posture, I'm looking at hand position, making sure that your elbows out and that you can control the depth of the graver. Yeah, I'm looking for those basic things for them. In a more advanced class, then we have to look at, okay, how deep is your cutting for your inlay? Do we have to go down deeper and stuff? That's a little more nuanced,
Hmm.
but those are the kind of things that, I'm looking for as I go around.
So it's easy to kind of pick out common mistakes or struggles among basic students, but what's something that you see advanced level students struggle with still?
They have pretty good graver control at that point. Maintaining a nice single line, getting the shading to be a nice transition from light to dark, that can be a little bit more of a struggle for the intermediate class, especially with rotating the vise and then, maintaining that incline to make your shade line start out nice and fine and then get deeper and deeper as you rotate the vise. Sometimes that can get away from you. And then background removal, making sure that your background is nice and flat and that there isn't any like inconsistencies in
Hmm.
the backgrounds. That's always something too that kind of usually needs some honing in on. I got little strategies that I kind of show to help you gauge that depth and maintain that depth as well. So
Hmm.
I think those are kind of two things that, are definitely seem to be things to, I don't know, not necessarily struggle, but to, hone in and
Refine.
perfect. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Refine. Yep.
What's something personally that you continue to try and refine or work towards?
Probably the background removal too,
Yeah.
It can be easy to get away from you and like
Yeah.
make sure it's nice and flat. But when you're working on things like the watches and they're so small, it doesn't really matter quite as much. But when you're working on a large piece like the knives and stuff, that kind of
It's
naturally
noticeable.
challenges you. Yeah, it
Yeah.
challenges you to do better. And I definitely consciously be like, okay, I need to like hone it in here. We're going to make sure this is nice and flat and perfect.
Are there any memorable moments within your classes? Like they had that moment that you're just like, yes, there we go, you know?
I mean, that happens a lot, especially in the beginner's course, right? You have those first couple of days where they're feeling like overwhelmed with all the new information. This is something completely foreign, right? For some of them, at least. Some of them have had, a little experience at the bench or whatever,
I feel
messing
like
around
it's
with gravers.
pretty common. I'm always like Wednesday. Wednesday is that moment where it's,
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Wednesday into Thursday, those are like when the clicks happen in people's heads, and then they're having a great time for the rest of the week. They're just like,
yeah.
oh, I love it. I don't want to leave by Friday. They're like, yeah, yep, it's true. By Wednesday, it seems to be a lot of people get the click. And if you don't, don't worry about it. It will come, but you just have to make sure to just put in the practice, deliberate practice, right?
What would be the biggest piece of advice for somebody coming into a class? What should they expect?
Well, I mean, we have everything there for you. Everything you need is there in our packet and stuff. So you don't need to bring anything extra. Make sure to bring a jacket. So you gotta stay warm. Come in with an open mind. Come in with the mindset that knowing this is going to be, especially for a beginner, this is going to be difficult. It's going to push you out of your comfort zone, but it's okay. And we're all here to learn the same thing. Usually people feel a little overwhelmed, but by that Wednesday, hopefully things are starting to like come together and stuff. So
a lot of that comes from like people see all of these master engravers works just like you when you first saw Sam's Penny, like you think you're going to be able to jump in and do that, but they've been doing it for years and years and years. Like you got to take those baby steps in the beginning.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're not going to be able to do it right away. And I mean, if everybody could, then I'm sure there would be a lot more engravers out there, right?
Yeah, that's right. I saw this article a couple of days ago, I think, that was for like a hand pushing engraving class. And they were talking about how engraving is a red listed craft, that it's like a dying craft. Like, well,
I mean, it definitely was back in the 80s.
yeah, I think it's coming back.
Oh, for sure. Thanks to like the internet and social media and stuff like that. And just having the classes like GRS does, being able to like pass on that knowledge and information. Because before, back in like the mid 80s and stuff, the masters were kind of dying off, but they weren't sharing their information, and people don't do apprenticeships anymore. So there isn't that pass on of knowledge. So being able to have these training centers and have it accessible is very important for the longevity of engraving to keep going.
I would also speak to like it's very valuable networking, especially with the diverse backgrounds that come. You might have no interest in leather work coming in, but then you meet, a Western artist who does leather work in it, or like, maybe you do one style of jewelry and you come in and there's another jeweler who does this style of jewelry, and it's just you never know.
And they work off each other.
Yes,
And
yes.
that, I mean, when you come there, like people make lifelong friends.
Family,
at our courses.
the GRS family.
I know they really do. I've had, I've had a couple.
It's true.
I know I've had a couple of them become friends, and the next thing you know, they're taking like multiple classes together, even though they live like far apart from each other and stuff. It's crazy to see, and it's awesome to see as well. But yeah, just the bouncing around of knowledge and ideas. It's a good experience.
All right, so this is my last question, and then we're gonna wrap it up. I know it goes so fast. What would you say is the most fulfilling part of teaching at GRS?
The most fulfilling part is Friday, in my opinion, when everybody is just like, they talk about how much they've learned during the week, how much they don't want to leave. They want like a second week. It just kind of warms my heart then to see them like not want to leave and not want to go and, and stay. And yeah. And I love collecting all my class photos as well. And I get to see all the students that I had and stuff. And you don't realize how many you actually have after doing a couple of years. I think I've been teaching for 8 or 9 years now, just to see how many students, you've had during this time. Yeah, all the people that you've, touched their lives, that sort of thing. It's cool. It's cool to see. Anybody that takes my class knows that I try to wear the same shirt on class day. And so as my long range joke, so that when I have the big collection of photos so I can lay them out, he's just wearing the same shirt.
But do you style your hair the same too?
It grows and it gets shaven off and it grows. And then, but the shirt will stay the same. Well, I think it's kind of getting a hole in the spot. Don't tell anybody. So I think it needs to be retired, actually.
Thank you for spending time with us this morning. We hope you stay tuned for the newest episode of The Angle with our next instructor.